He thought he was just jump-starting a stranger's car in the freezing dark at 2 a.m. But by the time the headlights flickered on, something deeper had sparked. What started as a simple act of kindness turned into love, healing, and a second chance at family. This is a story about broken people finding the one connection that finally makes them whole. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from and if this story touches you. Make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Some moments don't look life-changing when they happen. They show up in the cold, in the dark, without music or slow motion effects. It's just real life, unfiltered, unannounced. For me, it was 2:03 a.m. on a Tuesday, middle of winter. The kind of night where the air sticks to your bones and everything feels a little heavier than it should. I just locked up the garage, shoved the last invoice in the register, and was halfway through convincing myself to microwave a day-old burrito when I saw the flash hazard lights flickering weakly through the falling snow like a dying signal flare. I pulled over not because I'm a hero, not because I was bored. Honestly, I did it because I knew what it felt like to be stranded, to feel invisible. I couldn't stand the thought of someone else standing there with their life falling apart while cars flew past pretending not to see them. She was standing next to the car, wrapped in a long coat that looked like it belonged to someone else. Hood-up scarf pulled tight, posture rigid, like she was holding something in that might break if she exhaled too hard. The engine was dead, and so was the battery. One look told me everything I needed to know. Wasn't the first thing in her life to die quietly. "You need a jump?" I asked, my breath fogging between us. She looked up. Her eyes met mine, just for a second. No makeup, no expression, just tired. Not tired like she missed sleep. Tired like she missed peace. "Yeah," she said, her voice barely audible above. "The wind. Sorry, I didn't know who else to call." "You didn't call anyone?" I pointed out. I know. Something about that hit me. I didn't know what yet, but it sat in my chest like a stone. I popped my trunk, pulled out the jumper cables, and went through the motions like I'd done 100 times. She stood close, not in a flirtatious way, just in a please don't leave me alone with my thoughts kind of way. I hooked up the clamps, tightened the connection, and told her to try the key. Nothing. Try again. What? On the third try, the engine coughed back to life. Headlights blinked on. She exhaled. Finally, and then out of nowhere, she looked at me and said, "You didn't just jumpstart my car. You jumpstarted my heart." I stared at her, mouth slightly open. She blinked, shook her head. That sounded a lot better in my head. "I'm sorry, I forget it, but I didn't forget it." I laughed, not the fake kind, not the polite kind. The kind that comes out when the world surprises you. And trust me, I hadn't laughed like that in a long time. "It's a good line," I said. "Might steal it." That made her smile. Just a little, just enough to see the woman behind the coat and the exhaustion. We stood there for a second too long. Then she asked, "Can I buy you a coffee?" As a thank you? I should have said no. I really should have. I don't do coffee with strangers. I don't do middle-of-the-night conversations. I don't invite people into the version of myself I've spent years protecting. But something about her, something made me want to say yes, so I did. The diner was the only one open, a small place on the edge of Main Street that smelled like burnt toast and memory. We sat in a booth near the back. She ordered tea. I got black coffee. Extra strong. For a while we didn't talk. The silence wasn't awkward. It was thick. Full of questions we weren't ready to ask. "My name's Riley," she said eventually, hands wrapped around her mug like it was the only heat she trusted. "Mike," I replied. "You always stop for stranded women in the middle of the night." "Mike. Only the ones who look like they haven't asked for help in a long time." She gave a small, breathy laugh. Not quite a chuckle, more like she was surprised her body still remembered how we didn't trade life stories, surface. Things she used to be a nurse, took some time off, had a kid. I told her I ran a garage, had grease in my veins since I was 16, and had no real plans to change that. When we stepped outside again, snow had lightened up, but the chill was worse. Riley reached into her glove box, pulled out a thin blanket, and handed it to me. "For being a good man," she said. "Even if you don't believe you are," and just like that, she got into her car and drove off. No number. No hint of whether I'd ever see her again. I stood there in the dim orange glow of the streetlight, holding a threadbare blanket, wondering what the hell just happened. Back at the garage, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her voice, the look in her eyes, the way she said my name, like it didn't belong to a man who'd spent most of his life keeping people at a distance. I knew I'd probably never see her again. That was the safe bet. But I couldn't help hoping she'd prove me wrong, and sometimes hope is the beginning of everything. I didn't expect to see her again, that's the truth. I figured the moment was a flu-can intersection of two tired souls at the wrong hour, under the wrong sky. People like that pass through your life like wind. You feel them, then they're gone. That's how it usually goes. But with Riley, something told me I hadn't seen the last of her. Still, I didn't wait by the window or anything dramatic like that. I just did what I always did. Opened the shop at 8, worked on busted radiators, oil leaks, and the occasional flathead that gave me more trouble than it was worth. Then 3 days later, the bell above the garage door jingled. I looked up, and there she was. Hair pulled back, same long coat. But this time, she was holding 2 coffee cups and wearing the kind of smile you give someone when you're not sure if they want you there or not. "Hope you like it, Black," she said, holding one out. "They were out of cream. I figured you'd be the no-nonsense type anyway." I wiped my hands on a rag and took the cup. "You figured right." She looked around, took a cautious step inside like the place might bite. "Busy always," I said. "But I can make time." That earned me a smirk. It was almost charming. She sat on the stool near the workbench, legs crossed, eyes scanning the organized chaos. I noticed she kept her hands tight around her cup again, like it was a shield. Her sleeves were long again, too, covering more than the cold demanded. Details I didn't miss, but didn't press on. I just wanted to say thanks. "For the other night?" she said. "You already did," I replied. "Blanket and all." "Yeah," she paused. I didn't know what else to do. I don't thank people often. I could hear the weight in her voice. Gratitude laced with something older shame, maybe, or just the muscle memory of not trusting anyone. "I don't get thanked often," I said. "So I guess we're even." We sat there, sipping, while I tinkered with a carburetor that had no business being in a car that old. She didn't ask questions at first. She just existed, quiet, watchful, but not like she was judging. Like she was remembering what it felt like to just be somewhere and not have to perform. After about 20 minutes of silence and carb cleaner, she said, "My son's name is Ben." I looked up. "Yeah. 5.5. Smart, funny, hates peas." Strong opinion. "Very." I smiled and nodded. You're only..." Her eyes flicked down to the floor. "Yeah, and he's the only reason I left." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't have to. The look on her face said enough. There are kinds of silence that scream louder than sirens. Hers was one nigh changed. The subject not because I wanted to ignore it, but because I figured if she wanted to tell me, she would. "You still nursing?" She shook her head. Not since Ben was born. I took time off, then time just kept passing. Funny how that works." She studied me for a second. "What about you? Always been a mechanic?" I laughed. Nope, wanted to be an astronaut when I was 5. Ambitious. Got scared of heights by 8. Switched to monster truck driver. It's much more practical. Ended up under the hood instead. Started working on engines with my uncle. Stayed with it. She tilted her head. "You ever regret it?" I looked around. The tools, the smell of grease, the sound of a radio playing classic rock in the corner. "Some days," I said. "Most days. These machines there. Honest. If they're broken, they tell you. If you listen close enough, you can always find the problem." She nodded slowly. "People aren't like that." "No," I agreed. "They're not." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Make the story we talked a while longer, about nothing in particular movies. coffee preferences. How she once dreamed of living in Italy and running a bookstore. She said it like a confession, like it was a stupid dream she wasn't allowed to say out loud anymore. I told her it wasn't stupid, that everyone needs one wild dream to keep them alive when things fall apart. She looked surprised. It's not flattered-surprised. When she finally stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. I don't know why I came. Bye today. I do, I said. She looked at me, puzzled, because it's easier to come back to something that felt real, even for 5 minutes. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. She just nodded, pushed open the door, and walked out into the afternoon light. I watched her car drive away and realized something strange. I missed her, and that scared the hell out of me, because when you've spent your whole life learning to expect abandonment, the scariest thing in the world isn't losing someone, it's wanting them to stay. It became a pattern, even if we didn't call it that. Riley would show up every few days with coffee. Sometimes with pastries, sometimes with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She never called, never said she was coming. But somehow I always had an extra cup ready. I told myself I didn't care, told myself I was just being polite. But the truth was, her presence started to feel like part of my routine the same way. I knew when the oil filter delivery would come, or which wrench to grab without looking. She slid into my life quietly. I didn't stop her. We never had a big talk. No long dramatic sit-down where she unloaded her entire life story. It wasn't like that. Riley's truth came out in pieces. In the gaps between sentences, in the details she didn't mean to share, like the way she never sat with her back to the door, or how she jumped at loud noises but tried to pretend she didn't, or the way her hands trembled sometimes when she wasn't thinking about it, like her body remembered something her brain was trying to forget. The third time she visited, it was raining hard. She walked in soaked, holding 2 cups in a wet cardboard tray, laughing as water dripped from her coat. I should have just stayed in the car, she said, handing me the coffee. But I figured if I didn't show up, you might start thinking I was a figment of your imagination. You've got too much attitude for a ghost, I said. Flattering, she replied. Smirking, she peeled off her coat and draped it over the heater in the corner. I noticed she wore a sweatshirt this time, sleeves still long. Always long. She caught me glancing and immediately pulled them down further. She sat on the stool again, same one every time. Like it was marked now. I've been trying to leave the house more, she said after a long silence. Ben says I'm boring when I stay inside. Smart kid. She smiled at that. He's got a big imagination. Builds cities out of Legos. Names his toy cars like they're family members. Last week he told me one of them read Jack got married to a motorcycle named Linda. They had a baby scooter. I chuckled. Sounds like he inherited your charm. She paused, then looked down at her cup. No, that's all him. He didn't get much from his dad. Thank God I didn't press. But something in the way she said dad told me there. Was a longer story behind it. He doesn't ask about him anymore, she added. Used to, but not lately. I think he knows, even at 5. I think he knows some people don't deserve to be missed. Right. There it was. Just enough to show me the shape of the wound. Even if I couldn't see the scar, I didn't leave right away, she admitted. Stayed too long, told myself I had to make it work. That it was for Ben. That it was just stress, or a bad day, or that I was overreacting. That's the thing about damage. It makes you second-guess your own pain. Makes you think you're the problem. I set my coffee down. You're not. She looked up at me. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of something behind her usual guarded expression. Not weakness, not fear, just exhaustion. Thanks, she said quietly. I nodded. Didn't say more. Sometimes silence is the kindest answer. That day, she stayed longer than usual. I worked on a transmission rebuild while she watched. Asked questions, told me how she once tried to change a flat and ended up breaking the jack. Told her she was lucky she didn't lose a finger. She told me if I kept mocking her, she'd bring me decaf next time. When she left, she handed me a folded napkin, just in case you want real coffee next time, she said. Inside was her number. Simple, no drama. No pressure, just a line connecting one life to another. That night, I stared at my phone for over an hour. I didn't call, didn't text. Not because I didn't want to, but because it felt too easy, too delicate. Wasn't used to things coming without strings attached. I didn't want to be the guy who took her number and turned her into a distraction. She deserved more than that. So I waited. 3 days later, she showed up again. No coffee this time. It's just her and a small boy with messy curls and bright eyes clinging to her leg. "This is Ben," she said. He looked up at me, skeptical. Kids have this built-in radar for adults. They know when someone's safe and when someone's just pretending. He didn't speak, just stared, thumb in his mouth. He's clutching a little toy car like it was a lifeline. I crouched down, looked him in the eye. "That red Jack?" I asked, pointing at the car. His eyes widened. He nodded. "Heard he married a motorcycle." Ben blinked, then broke into a shy smile. And just like that, I was in. Riley watched the exchange like it was some kind of test stand I'd passed. She stayed for a few minutes, let Ben wander the garage while I showed him how to use a torque wrench. He didn't say much, but he didn't want to leave either when they finally headed out. Ben waved. It wasn't much, but it was something, and something I was learning could be everything. Riley started showing up more after that day. Not every morning, but enough that I stopped being surprised when the bell over the garage door chimed and she was standing there, with a lopsided smile and coffee that was always exactly how I liked it, strong. No sugar. Sometimes she brought Ben, sometimes not. But either way, it felt less like a coincidence and more like a choice. Like she had decided this place, this garage, this grease-stained space filled with half-finished jobs and stubborn engines was somewhere she wanted to be. At first, I told myself it was the coffee, that maybe I was just easy to talk to, or that she liked watching engines come apart and go back together again. People project onto things onto people too. Maybe she just needed somewhere to breathe. That's what I said. What I believed. Until the first time she brought lunch, it was a Tuesday. The kind of slow afternoon where nothing major was on the books. Had a few tune-ups, an oil change, and a cracked radiator that needed replacing but nothing pressing. Had my head under the hood of a mid-2000s pickup when I heard her voice behind me. "You strike me as the kind of guy who forgets to eat unless someone reminds you." I pulled back, wiped sweat off my forehead with my forearm. There she was. Riley, holding a paper bag and wearing a denim jacket that somehow made her look both strong and soft at the same time. "I eat," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "Gummy bears don't count." I gave a half smile. "Gummy bears got me through college." She handed me the bag, and I opened it to find 2 sandwiches, a bag of chips, and a bottled iced tea. "Oh God, I'm not mad about this," I said. "You better not be." I asked the deli guy what a mechanic would eat, and he said, "Whatever you give them as long as it's fast." We sat outside that day on the 2 overturned milk crates I kept near the back entrance. Sun high, sky clear, the kind of breeze that makes you forget what month it is. We ate in silence at first, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Riley didn't fill space with noise. She didn't ask questions she didn't mean. She just was. I liked that about her. Ben was with her that day. He sat a few feet away with his sketchbook, drawing what I later learned was a race car with flames shooting out the sides and a rocket strapped to the roof. Every few minutes, he'd look up to show me a new detail. I'd nod, act impressed, and he'd beam like he'd just won a medal. "So," she said between bites, "do you always make people feel safe?" I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean? You're just easy to be around? Even when you're quiet? Maybe especially when you're quiet?" "I wasn't aware I had that effect," I said. She looked down at her sandwich, then back at me. "Well, you do." There was a pause, one of those loaded silences that hovers right before someone says something real. When I left Ben's dad, she said, "I didn't trust anyone, not even myself. I didn't know if I was making the right move or just running scared, but being here, watching you with him. The way you look at people, like you're actually listening. I don't know, it just feels different." I didn't know what to say to that. Compliments, especially the deep ones, always hit sideways for me. I'm not the kind of man who needs praise to keep moving. I've spent too much time building walls to know what to do when someone looks over them with kindness. So I said what I knew. Well, said I'm glad it feels that way. She nodded like that was enough. Later that afternoon, while I was swapping out a busted serpentine belt, Ben sat cross-legged on the floor near the tool chest. Riley had gone inside to make a phone call, without looking up from his drawing. Ben said, "You're different than my mom's friends." Stopped working, glanced over. "Yeah, how so?" "You're quieter, but not in a mean way." I smiled. "Thanks, I think." "She smiles more when you're around," he added, still not looking at me. That one hit different. "She deserves to smile," I said. Ben finally looked up. "Yeah, she really does." When Riley came back out, she caught me looking at her Ellie. Looking in for the first time, I think she saw something shift in me. That night after they left, I sat on the stool where she usually perched and looked around the garage. Same tools, same walls, same air. But everything felt different. Like something invisible had moved in. Something I hadn't planned for. Lived most of my life trying not to feel too much. Feelings were messy. They complicated things. I knew how to rebuild an alternator blindfolded. Could diagnose engine noise like I spoke the language, but emotional stuff. That was dangerous. Terrain. That's where people get burned. But now, I was wondering what it might look like if I stopped running from that part of myself. If I leaned in just a little, let her in, just a little. That idea, it scared the hell out of me. Because it wasn't. Just Riley I was letting in. It was Ben too. And if I let them in, and it all fell apart. That wasn't just me getting hurt anymore. That was a kid watching. Another man walk away, and I didn't know if I could live with that. There's something about rhythm that makes people feel safe. We crave it, Evan, if we don't admit it. It's in the way we pour our coffee the same every morning, the route we take to work, the seat we always choose at the diner. That rhythm makes the world predictable, manageable, and for a man like me, who spent most of his life learning to survive on stability and solitude, rhythm was everything. Riley had become part of that rhythm. Her unannounced visits, her coffee, deliveries, Ben's quiet fascination with my tools. Even the way she'd sit sideways on that workbench stool. One leg tucked beneath her like she owned the space. Those little things had become part of the landscape. They came with no strings, no declarations, no pressure, just presence. Until one day they stopped. It was a Thursday. Normal day. Cloudy skies, light breeze. The kind of early fall weather that still clung to summer's warmth, but hinted at. Colder days coming. I didn't think much of it when the clock hit 10 a.m. and she hadn't shown up. People get busy. Life happens. But by noon, I was watching the front lot between jobs. Not waiting, just observing. Or at least that's what I told myself. By 3, I'd accidentally brewed a second pot of coffee. It's just in case. By closing time, I knew something was off. Still, I didn't text her. I didn't want to come off like I expected anything. From her, we weren't anything official. She was just a woman who brought me coffee and slowly carved out space in my world. I didn't own that. I didn't deserve that. So I sat with it. The next day, she didn't come either, or the day after. On Sunday, I went to the park Ben had mentioned once during a conversation, some little playground near their place. I didn't go to look for her. I went because I needed to get out of the garage. But I sat on a bench, across from the swing set, for over an hour, pretending I was just enjoying the breeze. I didn't see them. Monday came. Then Tuesday, and by then, my gut was screaming louder than my logic. Something was wrong. The feeling was familiar, the pit in my stomach, and the tightness in my chest, the constant checking of my phone like a junkie waiting for a fix. It reminded me of being 17, waiting for a foster parent who never picked me up from school. Waiting in the rain, backpack soaked, telling myself maybe they'd just forgotten. But the truth was, they never came back. That's the thing. Abandonment does to you, it trains your brain to prepare for the drop, to expect the silence. So by Wednesday, I was telling myself it was over. That she'd gotten scared or moved on or realized she didn't need a quiet mechanic with a garage full of memories. That whatever this was, it had only ever meant something to me. That night, I didn't bother locking up the garage. I just sat, in the back, bottle in hand, staring at the concrete floor like it had answers I didn't. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. I hated that I missed her. hated that I missed him. I'd let myself get used to Ben's constant stream of questions, his drawings, his odd little car stories. I hated that the stool where Riley used to sit felt empty. I hated that I noticed it at all. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I didn't answer it first. Just stared at it, heart pounding like it was wired to a detonator, but something told me to pick up. Hello? There was a pause, then a shaky breath. Mike, her voice. God, her voice. I stood up without realizing it. Riley Wara? You okay? Another pause. Her voice was quiet, like she was trying not to be overheard. I'm sorry. I should have called. I didn't know what to say. Are you hurt? Does Ben know? We're okay now. We just needed to leave for a few days. Leave. What happened? There was a rustle on her end. Fabric moving. Maybe she was holding the phone under a blanket. Maybe she was in a car. I couldn't tell. He showed up, she whispered. My blood ran cold. Your ex. Yes. At my sister's place. Screaming. Pounding on the door. She called the police, but he was gone by the time they arrived. Jesus. I took Ben and left through the back. We're staying at a friend's cabin. It's off-grid. No cell service. I just drove out this morning. To get reception, I sat down hard on the nearest tool cart. Are you safe now? Yes. We're okay. Silence. Then she said, I didn't know if I should call you. I didn't want to drag you into this. I closed my eyes, exhaled. You're not dragging me anywhere, Riley, but I wish you'd told me. I didn't know if I had the right. 2. My voice was steadier than I felt. You do. Another long pause. I miss the garage, she said softly. Ben does too. Keeps asking if we'll go back. You can, I said. Whenever you're ready. Right away. When she did, her voice cracked just enough to let me know she was holding back tears. Thank you. We didn't say goodbye. The call just ended. But the silence afterward felt different, like something had shifted. She'd chosen to call. She'd trusted me with the chaos. And I realized then, this wasn't just a routine anymore. This was a connection. Real. Messy. Unspoken. But real. And I was in it whether I was ready or not. I didn't sleep much after that call. My brain was wired like a car running on dirty fuel jerky, restless, stalling every time it tried to slow down. I kept replaying her voice, her words, the part where she whispered that he showed up, that Ben had to be rushed out the back door in the middle of the night like a fugitive, that she'd fled to some cabin in the middle of nowhere because it was the only safe place she could think of. I hadn't even known her last name until a few weeks ago. I didn't know what that made us. We weren't dating. We weren't a couple. There hadn't been some big defining moment where we said, this is real, but damn it, it was real. I knew it in the pit of my gut. I knew it by the silence she left behind. I knew it because the garage hadn't felt like home since she stopped showing up. The next morning, I called out of work. First time in 3 years, I left the garage key with my assistant Charlie and just said, family stuff. That was enough. I didn't ask questions. Charlie was a good guy. Older, wiser, and blessed with the rare ability to sense when to shut up. I didn't have an address, but Riley had mentioned the lake before. Once, in passing, when she was talking about where she and her sister used to go to get away from things when they were kids. I remembered her saying, it's not fancy, it's just a little A-frame with a creaky dock, and the kind of place where the only sound is your own thoughts. So I drove 2.5 hours of winding, mountain roads and spotty cell service. I passed a few cabins, most of them boarded up for the season. It was late fall now, the kind of weather where the trees looked like they were on fire, and the air had that bite of cold that said winter was already packing its bags. Eventually, I found it. The gravel drive. The old green SUV parked out front. A set of small handprints on the back window in the fog. I pulled in and parked, heart thudding like I was about to confront something holy and dangerous at the same time. I didn't know if I was crossing a line. Didn't know if showing up would freak her out or make her feel seen. But I knew one thing: I couldn't sit around pretending I didn't care anymore, because I did. The front door opened before I even knocked. Riley stood there in a thick sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose bun, no makeup. Eyes swollen like she'd cried herself empty. She didn't say a word, just looked at me. I raised a hand. I come bearing coffee and bad boundaries. She blinked. And then, without warning, she laughed. That breathless, startled kind of laugh that's not really laughter. It's a release. Then her eyes filled again, and she stepped back without a word, opening the door wider. Inside, the place was small, rustic. A fireplace smoldered low in the corner. The faint smell of old pine and dust hung in the air. Ben was sitting on the floor with a set of wooden blocks, building what looked like a robot with wheels. He glanced up when I entered. "Hey, buddy," I said. His face lit up like someone flipped a switch. "You found us," he shouted, scrambling to his feet and throwing his arms around my legs. Riley closed the door behind me, and for a second, none of us spoke. The moment was heavy, not awkward, just full. We sat at the small table by the window. I poured the coffee I brought, and we sipped it like old friends, pretending we weren't both on the edge of something irreversible. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you where we were," she said finally. "I get it," I said. "You were scared." "I was embarrassed too," she admitted. I told myself I'd never let him get near us again, and then he just showed up, like he'd been watching, waiting. I clenched my jaw. My fists tightened. The thought of that man, her ex, prowling around, trying to invade her life again, filled me with a rage I hadn't felt in years. "Is he still around?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not that I know of. The police said they'd file a report, but unless he makes a direct threat, there's not much they can do." "That's bullshit." She looked at me, then really looked at me. "Why did you come?" I swallowed. "Because I care. Because you didn't just disappear, you left a hole behind. And because if you're going to war, you shouldn't have. To do it alone?" Her eyes welled again. She blinked fast, trying to keep the tears from falling. "No one's ever shown up for me like that." "Well," I said softly, "I'm not no one." She reached across the table, took my hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was firm. "Stay the night," she said. "There's a guest room. Ben would love it." I'd love it. I didn't bring anything." She smirked. "I'll let you borrow a flannel." At night I helped Ben roast marshmallows in the old stone fireplace, told me all about his new superhero car, blaster truck, which had laser headlights and wheels that could turn into wings. I listened like it was gospel. Riley watched us from the couch, a soft smile pulling at her tired face. Later, Ben was asleep and the fire was low. Riley and I sat on the old creaky couch. She leaned against my shoulder, and I wrapped an arm around her without thinking. "It's peaceful here," I said. "Too peaceful," she replied. "It makes the chaos feel far away, but it's not. It's just waiting." I didn't have a solution. I didn't have some perfect plan to protect her or erase her past, but I did have presence. I had this. And maybe sometimes that's enough. Before she went to bed, she kissed my cheek. Just a brush, just enough. And I stayed. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. And that was a first. The next morning at the cabin started with the sound of birds, dozens of them, chirping outside the cracked window like nature's alarm clock. It was too early for any sane man to be awake, but I wasn't used to sleeping in new places, especially ones that smelled like cedar and memory. The mattress was old, the pillow too soft, but none of that mattered. I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, calm. When I opened the bedroom door, I heard Riley humming from the kitchen and the faint clatter of dishes. The smell of eggs and burnt toast drifted through the air. I followed it and found her standing barefoot by the stove. Hair still a mess, sleeves rolled up, eyes focused like she was trying to control the entire universe with a spatula. "Morning," I said. She turned, startled for half a second, then smiled. "Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. Birds did." Chuckled. "They're loud out here. Ben swears they're gossiping." That checks out. I sat at the table and looked around. The cabin was small, but it had personality. Worn furniture, faded rugs, shelves lined with books that looked like they hadn't been opened in years.
Ow.
It was the kind of place built for retreat. Quiet, disconnected, slow. I could see why she came here. Why she needed this kind of sanctuary. Ben's still asleep? I asked. Barely. He's in bed, pretending to be a statue. He does that when he's not ready to start the day. Respect. She placed a plate of food in front of me. Scrambled eggs, 2 pieces of slightly blackened toast, and half an avocado sliced with surprising precision. I hope you're not picky. I'll eat anything that's not moving, I said. This is fancy for a cabin breakfast. Well, I wanted to thank you, she said, sitting across from me with her own plate. For coming, for being here, for not asking for anything in return. You don't have to thank me for showing up. She looked down at her plate for a second. People don't usually show up. Before I could say anything, I heard the sound of little feet thudding across the floorboards. A second later, Ben appeared hair wild, eyes still puffy from sleep, dragging a blanket behind him like a superhero cape. When he saw me, he froze. I braced for awkwardness, but then he grinned. You're still here. I am. He walked over, climbed onto the bench beside me, and looked at my plate. You got more eggs than me? That's because I'm bigger. He nodded like that was reasonable, then picked up a fork and started stealing bites off my plate without asking. I just slid the plate a little closer to the middle. We ate like that, the 3 of us, in a kind of quiet rhythm. I didn't realize I'd been craving. No TV, no phones, just the occasional sound of silverware against ceramic and Ben's low commentary on how this toast is burned, but like the good kind of burned. After breakfast, Riley went out to make a call, something about checking in with her sister. That left me and Ben inside. He grabbed his markers and a stack of printer paper and asked if I'd draw with him. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure how to. I didn't know the rules of this kind of interaction. I'd never drawn with a kid before, never been asked. But I sat down on the floor beside him anyway, and he handed me a marker like I'd passed some kind of test, just by agreeing. What are we drawing? I asked. Monsters, but nice ones. Is there any other kind? He giggled and got to work. His drawing was wild. 7 arms, 2 heads, flames shooting out the back. Mine looked like a blob with legs and a smiley face. That one's kinda weird, he said, pointing at mine. I've been told that before. We kept drawing for almost an hour. Every time I thought he'd get bored, he'd add another detail. Eyebrows, lightning bolts, jetpacks. I was impressed by how vivid his imagination was, how free it was. When Riley came back inside and saw us, she didn't say a word, just stood in the doorway for a moment, watching us from across the room like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I didn't know how to explain the look on her face. It wasn't just happiness. It was something deeper, something like hope. Later that day, we walked down to the lake. Ben insisted on bringing a net and a bucket to catch sea monsters. Even though the lake was so clear you could see every pebble on the bottom, he ran ahead, swinging the net around like a sword. Riley and I walked behind him, close enough to talk, far enough to let him lead. I've never seen him like this, she said. Like what? So open? So light? I looked at her. That's all you gave him that? She shook her head. No, I kept him safe, but you're making him feel safe and seen. I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't used to hearing those kinds of things. I wasn't used to being credited. For something good, I usually just fixed things, made them run again. But maybe somehow, that's what I was doing here too, just on a different kind of engine. Ben caught 0 sea monsters but managed to soak his shoes, his pants, and half his sweater. We walked back with him barefoot, swinging his wet socks. Like trophies, O'Reilly carried his shoes, and I carried the bucket filled with muddy rocks he declared super rare. That night, after dinner and another drawing session, I tucked him into bed for the first time. Can you read this? He asked, holding out a book. I glanced at the cover, some story about a brave little car named Max. Sure. He snuggled under the blanket, eyes wide as I read, and by the time I got to the part where Max saved the day with a turbo boost, Ben was fast asleep. I closed the book, set it on the nightstand, and just sat there for a while, watching him breathe, watching the peace in his face, and realizing that somewhere along the line, this little boy had carved out a space in my heart I didn't know was there. When I walked out, Riley was waiting in the hall. "He let you read to him," she said, almost in disbelief. "He doesn't usually, not even with my sister." I shrugged. This must be the voice. She stepped closer. "He trusts you." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. Because I realized in that moment, so did she, and I was finally starting to trust myself. 2. We stayed 2 more days at the cabin. 2 full days of quiet breakfasts, long walks, story time with Ben, and sitting on the porch at night with Riley while the lake glimmered like glass. It was peaceful. Beautiful even. And that scared me more than anything I'd felt in a long time. I know how to operate in chaos. I know how to survive hard things. I've lived in basements with mold on the walls and bunk beds with strangers. I've kept my distance, kept my heart bolted shut, and I've been fine functional. But I've never been built for happy. It's not that I didn't want it. I just never trusted it to last. And when something good doesn't last, the fall hurts a hell of a lot more than never having it to begin with. So yeah, I started to panic. It didn't happen all at once. It started small. After we left the cabin, I found reasons not to see them for a few days. Said the garage was slammed. Told Riley I had to catch up on backlog jobs, that my inventory was off, that a shipment came in wrong. Most of it was true, technically, but the part I left out was that I could have made time. I just didn't. Because every time I looked at Ben's drawings on the garage wall, or caught a glimpse of Riley's flannel still folded on the back of the stool, I felt that old fear creeping in like a vine crawling up my spine. What if I messed this up? What if I let them down? What if I got too close and it all fell apart? Worse, what if I started believing I deserved this? That's the real trap. Because once you start believing you deserve love, that you deserve family, that you deserve peace, you have something to lose. I've lived most of my life with nothing to lose. I didn't text Riley for 3 days. She didn't blow up my phone, didn't show up at the garage, didn't send passive-aggressive messages. She just waited. On day 4, she sent a simple text. "Everything okay?" I stared at it for 10 full minutes. Typed out a dozen replies. Deleted every one. I finally sent, "Yeah. Just slammed at the shop." She replied, "Okay, let me know if you need anything." That was it. No guilt trip, no drama. And that made me feel worse, because I could feel her pulling back. Not out of spite, but self-preservation. She wasn't the type to chase someone who didn't want to be caught. Why? She'd had enough of that in her past. I could see her doing the math in her head. Is this man safe? Is this going to end the way it always does? I hated that I was making her ask those questions. By the end of the week, I was snapping at Charlie. I was yelling at engines that didn't cooperate. Drinking more coffee than usual and eating less. My chest felt tight, my sleep was garbage, and the garage felt emptier than it ever had before, and with people in it. On Saturday, I found myself standing at the hardware store, buying parts I didn't need, avoiding my own damn garage like it had become haunted. I walked the aisles with a shopping basket half full of nothing important, then sat in my truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes, engine idling. I was trying to decide whether to text her. I didn't. That night, I finally drove by her place. Lights were off in most of the windows. A faint glow in Ben's room. I sat across the street, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. What the hell was I doing? Was I really going to ghost a woman who trusted me enough to bring me into her home? Let me read bedtime stories to her son? Let me stay? What kind of man did that? Someone who was broken. That voice in my head, the one that always shows up when things get good, it started screaming again. You're not built for this. She's going to leave anyway. Better to walk now, before you wreck it. And then another voice, quieter, pushed back. Or maybe you're not that man anymore. I didn't knock on the door that night. Didn't send a message. I just drove home and sat in the garage with the lights off until the sun came up. On Sunday, Riley showed up at the shop. I didn't see her car pull in. Didn't hear the bell. I was under the hood of a '98 Buick, swearing at a rusted bolt. When I turned, and there she was, arms crossed, eyes guarded, coffee in hand. "Hey," she said. I wiped my hands. "Hey." She held out the cup. "Didn't know if you were still taking deliveries." I took it, unsure of what to say. I could feel her watching me, waiting. "You disappeared," she said, not accusing, just a fact. "I got busy," I replied. "Mike." Her voice had weight. I sighed. I freaked out. There it was. No point lying. She stepped closer. "About what?" I looked around the garage like I was trying to find the words on the shelves. "This," I said. "Oh, Ben. Everything I've never had something like this. I don't know how to be in it without breaking it." She nodded slowly. "So your solution was to break it first." I didn't mean to. I panicked. She was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, "Do you want this, us?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes, I do." "Then stop acting like love is a trap. You're not a prisoner here." That hit me like a wrench to the ribs. I didn't deserve how calm she was. How kind. But maybe, just maybe, that's why I needed her. We stood there in the silence, surrounded by tools and engine grease and years of self-preservation. I realized something else. I was tired of being scared of good things. I wanted to stay. I wanted to try. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know. I'll do better, I hope so." And then she stepped forward, wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "We don't need you to be perfect, Mike. We just need you to be here." I held her like a man who'd just remembered what it meant to be wanted, and I didn't let go. The Monday after our talk, Riley and Ben walked into the garage like nothing had happened. Maybe in their minds nothing really had. That's the thing about people who've lived through storms. They don't panic over a little thunder. They've already seen the lightning, but for me, that day felt different. It wasn't just about resuming a pattern. It was about choosing it, choosing to stay, to show up, to be consistent. It's not just present. That's something I'd never done before. Not for anyone, not even for myself. Riley brought coffee, like usual. This time she handed me a second one-sweetened light for Ben, she said with a wink, even though he's not allowed to have caffeine. She said it like a joke, but when I looked down at the cup, there was a little heart drawn in marker on the lid. And Ben, he came in like he owned the place, ran straight to his workstation, a small corner near my toolbox where I'd cleared space for him. I'd built a little wooden bench from scraps lying around the shop and found an old metal drawer for his tools. He had his own wrench now. It's plastic, bright red, absolutely useless, but he carried it like it was forged in fire. "Can we fix something today?" he asked, eyes wide, cheeks flushed. "Absolutely," I said. "You ready to get certified in oil changes?" He nodded like I'd just invited him to space camp. We spent the next hour working on a basic sedan. It's an easy job, just a filter swap and tire rotation, but I narrated everything like it was a mission briefing. Ben held the flashlight. "Asked 1,000 questions. Wiped his hands on a little rag he'd tucked in his back pocket like he'd seen me do. The kid was watching my every move, mimicking, absorbing, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't terrify me. Riley sat on the stool nearby, flipping through a paperback novel, occasionally chiming in with sarcastic commentary about how I was clearly grooming the next great pit crew champion. But even behind the teasing, there was a softness in her eyes, kind of contentment I hadn't seen in her before. Like for once, she wasn't bracing for the floor to fall out from under her. Like she believed this was real, and maybe it was. After the job was done, I paid Ben in orange slices and a high five. Riley brought out sandwiches, and we all sat on the floor eating like it was a picnic. Ben told me about his dream to build a flying car that could also turn into a submarine. I told him I'd invest, but only if it had cup holders. We laughed. We existed, and something about that, 3 people, eating cold sandwiches on a concrete floor with engine grease on our hands, felt more like family than any holiday dinner I'd ever had. That week became the beginning of a new rhythm. Riley and Ben started coming by the shop almost every afternoon, not because they needed to, not because anything was broken, but because they wanted to be there. With me, sometimes Riley would bring her laptop and sit in the corner working on resumes or writing. She told me she was thinking of going back to school part-time. She missed nursing, but wanted to approach it differently this time. Less hospital politics, more community health, something with heart. I told her I didn't understand half of what she said, but I was proud of her anyway. Ben kept his routine 2 flashlight, fake wrench, random questions. I started giving him small tasks, holding bolts, sorting tools by size, inspecting parts with a magnifying glass. He took it seriously, called himself assistant mechanic in training, drew a badge on cardboard and wore it every day. One afternoon, I found an old leather patch from my first shop uniform, had my name on it in stitched block letters. Mike, I handed it to him. He looked at it like I'd just given him a gold medal. Can I put it on my shirt? It's only if you're ready to represent the brand, I said. He ran to Riley, holding it up. Look, Mommy, I'm part of Mike's team. Riley's smile was wide, but her eyes shimmered. Later that night, after they left, I stood in the empty garage for a long time, just breathing, taking it in. The silence felt different now, not lonely, just quiet, like it was catching its breath after a long day of life. And in that stillness, I let myself feel something dangerous: hope. I hadn't let myself go there before. Hope had teeth. Bite! It could bite back. But that night, I leaned into it. I started picturing things. Permanence. A dinner table with more than one chair. Ben's drawings on the fridge. Riley's laugh echoing through a house that smelled like oil and pancakes. I shook it off, tried to be rational. But some part of some peace I'd buried under years of quiet survival was beginning to believe I didn't have to live in the garage forever, that maybe I could build something bigger, that maybe family wasn't just a word other people got to use. The next day, Riley brought over a slow cooker full of chili. I figured you hadn't eaten a vegetable in a week, she said. You're not wrong. We ate together in the office, which I'd cleaned up just enough to not be embarrassed. After Ben went to the back room to play with an old tire pressure gauge he was convinced was a laser gun, Riley and I sat close on the couch, too close too. Pretend it didn't mean something. I like this, she said softly. What? This, us, coming here. It feels normal. It is normal. She looked at me then, eyes full of both peace and fear. Not used to normal. Me neither. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. There was nothing to explain. It was already happening. Later that evening, as they packed up to go, Ben asked, Can we come back tomorrow? Riley looked at me. I didn't hesitate. Absolutely. He fist pumped and ran to the car. Riley lingered at the door. You sure this isn't too much? I stepped close, brushed a strand of hair from her face. No, I said. It's just enough. And I meant it. Every word. It started like any other Friday. I'd finished a brake job before lunch, knocked out 2 oil changes in the afternoon, and even had time to reorganize the socket drawer that had been a mess since February. Riley and Ben came by like they always did right after school, right before sunset. Ben still wearing his backpack, Riley looking tired but soft around the edges, like she was beginning to understand how to carry peace again. I had no reason to think the day would be different, but that's how life works, right? It's the big moments. Never feel big when they arrive. They sneak in dressed like any other minute, wearing a calm expression while they quietly rearrange your life. That day it was Riley's car. Her engine had been hesitating for weeks. I'd told her to bring it in, but she kept brushing it off. It wouldn't start at all. Battery was fine. Spark was weak. It's probably the ignition coil, maybe more. We'll have to tow it, I said after 10 minutes under the hood. She bit her lip. And how long would that take to fix? Depends what I find once I open it up. It could be a few hours. It could be a full day. She glanced at Ben, who was crouched beside the tire, poking at a beetle with a stick. He's got school on Monday? I've got work. My sister's out of town. I don't. She hesitated. I don't know what to do. I looked at her, then at Ben, then back at the garage, and then I heard myself say it, before I had time to second guess, You could stay. Her eyes widened. Stay? I've got the apartment upstairs. It's not fancy, but it's clean. There's a spare room. Enough space. Just until I get the car sorted. She blinked. Her instinct was to say no. I could see it in the way. Her jaw tensed, the way she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She was scanning every angle for risk. That's what survival does to you. But then she looked at Ben. He was smiling, completely oblivious to the adult calculus happening around him. Would that be okay with you? She asked him. He shrugged, like it was no big deal. I like Mike's garage. She looked back at me. Are you sure? Yeah, I said. It's just a place. You're the ones who make it feel like home anyway. That night, I cleared out the spare room. It had been a glorified storage closet since I moved in half filled with spare parts, old jackets, and a lamp I never figured out how to throw away. I vacuumed, changed the sheets, put fresh towels on the dresser, like I was running a damn bed and breakfast. They came up around 7. Riley carried a duffel bag. Ben had a pillow with dinosaurs on it and a worn-out teddy bear tucked under one arm. They stepped into the apartment like it was sacred, ground quiet, respectful, cautious, like they didn't want to leave footprints on the floors. Wow, Ben said. It smells like tools and pancakes. I've been told that's my signature scent, I said. Riley smiled, her eyes scanning the space. It's cozy. It's small.
8.
Small can be good. Dinner was simple. I reheated chili Riley had brought earlier. In the week, we sat around the tiny kitchen table, 3 chairs, tight quarters, Ben with a spoon too big for his bowl. He talked the whole time. About school, about a science project involving magnets, about a friend named Zach who apparently believed aliens lived in the school's air vents. Afterward, we watched a movie on my beat-up couch. Ben curled up beside Riley, his head on her shoulder. Halfway through, he fell asleep. Riley didn't move. She looked down at him, gently stroking his hair like it was second nature. Like she'd done it 1,000 times before and would do it 1,000 more. I offered to carry him to bed, but she shook her head. He'll wake up grumpy if we move him. Just give him a few minutes. So we sat there, the movie playing quietly in the background, her son sleeping between us, and I felt something settle inside me. Something old and heavy that had been shifting for months. You really okay with this? She asked, barely above a whisper. Yeah, I mean all of it, not just tonight. I turned toward her. I'm here, Riley. I know I fumbled. Things I've hesitated, but I'm here and I want to be. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it again, that hope. That trembling belief trying to root itself in soil that's seen to many droughts. I want to be too, she said later, after we got Ben into bed and she showered and changed into sweats. We stood in the kitchen, just us. The space between us buzzed with unspoken things. I know this isn't how you planned your life, I said. No one plans for their engine to die in front of someone who actually knows how to fix it. I smiled. Still, I just want you to. No, I don't see this as temporary. I know we haven't labeled things, but I want this. You, him, all of it. She stepped closer. I want it too. Her voice cracked. I'm scared it's going to disappear. I nodded. Me too. But maybe we stop running from that. Maybe we just let it be good. She leaned in and kissed me, slow, deliberate, like she was carving the moment into memory. That night, she slept in my bed. I didn't sleep much, not because anything dramatic happened, but because everything felt too quiet to write. I laid there with her beside me, the sound of Ben's soft breathing down the hall. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe. This wasn't just a new chapter. It was a whole different book. And for the first time in my life, afraid of reading it, the first sleepover turned into 2. 2 turned into the weekend. And by Monday morning, it felt like we had slipped into a version of life I hadn't dared to imagine. Riley got Ben ready for school in my kitchen. She made coffee in my chipped old pot like she'd been doing it for years. Ben drew pictures on the napkins I never used. And Riley pinned them on the fridge with old magnets shaped like spark plugs and cartoon hot dogs. It was domestic. It was easy. It was terrifying. I should have been happy. And a part of me was. But beneath the calm, something started to churn. That old feeling again, the one that crept in whenever things started to feel too good. like waiting for the other shoe to drop, like the silence after the tick of a time bomb right before it explodes. The panic wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, subtle. It whispered, "You're not ready for this. You're faking it. They'll figure it out." And the worst part? Started to believe it. It began with small things. Little distance. A little less eye contact. I stayed late at the garage after hours even when I didn't need to. Told Riley I had inventory issues or paperwork. She never questioned it, but I could feel her noticing. She didn't push. It made it worse. I'd come upstairs at night and find her already curled up on the couch reading. Ben asleep in the spare room, his stuffed dinosaur tucked under his arm. She'd smile, ask if I wanted tea. I always said yes, but I could feel the space growing between us as we sat in the same room. One night, I caught my reflection in the garage window. Grease on my shirt, exhaustion in my eyes, shoulders pulled tight like I was bracing for a blow that hadn't come yet. And I asked myself, "What are you doing?" I didn't have a good answer. The next morning, I missed breakfast. On purpose. Told her I had to open early, even though Charlie was handling the first shift. She nodded, handed me coffee, kissed my cheek like everything was normal, but her eyes held questions. By Thursday, I started second-guessing everything. I wasn't cut out for this. I didn't know how to parent. I didn't know how to be someone's partner. I didn't even know what it meant to have someone count on you. I'd gone from solitary mechanic to full-time pseudo-dad in less than 3 months. And I was starting to feel like I was building a house on wet concrete. That night, Riley waited until Ben was asleep before she said anything. "You're pulling away," she said softly. I didn't deny it. Just leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, heart pounding. "Is it something I did?" "No." "Then what is it?" "I don't know," I said. A lie. She walked closer, hands folded in front of her, like she was holding herself. "Back. You've been here, but not here. And I need to know if you're still in this." I looked at her, and for a moment all I saw was how much I didn't deserve her. Her kindness, her patience, the way she let me unravel without throwing it back at me. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of what?" "Of not being enough, screwing this up, of letting you down." She stepped forward, placed her hands on my chest. "You will screw up. You will let us down sometimes. That's what people do. But we don't need perfect. We just need present." Her voice cracked on that last word. "Mike, I've had to carry everything alone for a long time, and it's exhausting. But letting you in was the first time I didn't feel like I had to do it all by myself. Please don't make me regret that." That gutted me, because she was right. I was punishing her for something she hadn't done. Projecting all my old wounds onto this new life, as if her love was just another trap. As if caring was a mistake. I took her hands. "I don't want to run. I don't know how to stand still." She nodded, then leaned. "Just a little. You don't have to have it all figured out. But you can't keep pulling away every time it starts to feel real." We stood there in silence, the soft hum of the fridge the only sound in the room. I didn't have the words to promise her everything, but I could promise the sigh wouldn't shut her out. The next day I took a half day from the shop. I picked Ben up from school. He didn't expect it. His face lit up when he saw me, backpack bouncing as he ran toward the truck. "You came," he shouted, sliding into the passenger seat. Of course I did. We drove to the hardware store, bought supplies for a birdhouse, spent the afternoon in the garage building it together. He insisted it'd have 2 floors for bird families. I didn't argue that night. He showed it to Riley like it was a prize from a science fair. "He used the big hammer," he said proudly, "but only a little." She looked at me, something unspoken passing between us. Later, after Ben went to bed, I made us tea. We sat on the couch again. This time I reached for her hand first. "I still don't know what I'm doing," I said. She smiled. "None of us do, but I'm not going anywhere." She leaned her head on my shoulder. That's all I needed. To hear, the letter came on a Tuesday. It's one of those dry, brittle days where the air feels like paper and every sound echoes too loudly. I had just finished restocking the tire inventory when Charlie walked into the garage holding a small envelope like it was a live wire. "This came for you," said, eyebrows drawn. "No return address." I took it from him slowly.
What?
Envelope, black ink, my name scribbled across the front, just Mike. Nothing else. No last name, no shop name, no street number. Which meant someone had either hand-delivered it or knew exactly where to find me. I felt the weight of it immediately. Not in my hand, in my chest. Charlie watched my face, waiting. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Probably nothing." He nodded and went back to work. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it, flipped it over, held it under the shop light like it might reveal something if I studied it hard enough. Then I shoved it in my back pocket and tried to finish my day. But every bolt I turned, every engine I inspected, my mind kept circling back to that envelope. By the time I closed up, I felt like I was carrying a brick around in my jacket. Upstairs, Riley was cooking. Ben was on the floor building something, with Legios that looked like a cross between a spaceship and a monster truck. It was domestic, safe, familiar. And I stood there at the door, holding a piece of paper that didn't belong in this life I was building. Riley looked up. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said too fast. "Just tired." She nodded and went back to stirring. I excused myself to the bathroom, shut the door, finally opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, line torn from a notebook. The handwriting was messy, rushed, but familiar. Mackay wasn't. "Sure, I should reach out. It's been a long time. Maybe too long. But I saw something online. You, a photo. I recognized your face. You look different, but it's still you. I'm sorry. For everything, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know I'm still here. Jay." That was it. No last name, no phone number, no return address. Just a ghost from another life scribbled into the present. Jay, there was only one person that could be: Jordan, my older brother. Half-brother, technically. We hadn't spoken in over 15 years. Not since he'd taken off with a stolen car and $300 from the foster family we were both staying with. Last I heard, he'd been in and out of jail. Always chasing something. Always disappearing when things got hard. I sat on the closed toilet lid, staring at the note like it might bite. He found me. After all this time, and worse, saw a photo. I hadn't posted anything online in years, but Riley had. I remembered. Now, 2 weeks ago, she took a picture of me and Ben building the birdhouse. Oh, she said it was the first time Ben had smiled that wide in months. She posted it on Facebook. It's just a simple caption. "Grateful for this life." I never even noticed it, and now Jordan had seen it. I folded the letter and shoved it into the drawer beneath the sink, washed my face, stared into the mirror, like it might give me an answer. What did he want? Money? Forgiveness? Some kind of reunion? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. That night I was quieter than usual. Riley noticed. She always did. "You're somewhere else," she said, after Ben went to bed. "Just thinking, want to talk about it?" I shook my head. Not yet. She didn't push, just reached out and held my hand while we watched some cooking show. Neither of us really cared about, but my mind wasn't on food. It was on Jordan, and the fact that his shadow now lived in the same space I was trying to fill with light. The next day, I went to the post office. Asked if they'd seen anyone dropping off letters without postage or return addresses. The guy behind the counter shrugged. "Happens all the time. People don't want to be found." Exactly. Back at the shop, I kept replaying the last time. I saw Jordan. We were 17 and 16. He was the loud one. The brave one. The one who taught me how to steal a pack of gum and sneak into movie theaters. But he was also the one who left. He promised he'd come back. Promised he'd get us out of that hellhole. He never did. I spent 2 years waiting. Then I stopped. Built a life, moved on, or at least tried to. And now here he was, scribbled into my world again, that night. After dinner, I sat down with Riley on the porch. "There's something I need to tell you," I said. She turned toward me, all quiet. "Strength. I got a letter." "From someone in my past?" Her eyebrows lifted. Who? My brother? I didn't know you had one. Neither do I said. Not really. We haven't talked in over a decade. He left, took off, left me behind in a foster home. Like I was baggage. Riley listened, eyes steady. He found me through that photo you posted. She winced. I'm sorry, don't be. You didn't do anything wrong. And I don't know if I can go back to that version of myself, the one he remembers. Riley reached out, placed her hand on mine. You're not that person anymore. I know, but what if he is? Then you don't let him in. Not if it risks what you've built. I looked at her, saw the flicker of fear in her expression, fear that my past could rip open the fragile future. We were building. I don't want him to take this from me, I said. Not again. Then don't let him. Simple, fierce. Final that night. I dug the letter out from the drawer. I read it again and again, looking for anything underneath the words manipulation, threat, maybe even a cry for help. All I found was sadness. Still, I burned it, lit a match, dropped it in a metal can in the garage, watched it curl and blacken until it was nothing. But ash then. I walked back upstairs and didn't look back. It was a rainy Tuesday when the idea first came up. Not in a dramatic way, not during some tearful speech or crisis moment. It came, like most real decisions do, in the middle of the mundane. Ben had spilled orange juice on the kitchen table. Riley was wiping it up while giving him a soft lecture on how cups don't belong on the edge of the table. I was rinsing dishes at the sink, half listening, half daydreaming, when he looked up and said, completely out of nowhere, "Am I allowed to call Mike my dad now?" Riley froze mid-wipe. My hand stilled under the faucet. For a second, no one spoke. Ben looked between us, confused but not scared. Just curious. It's just, he added, when we did the family tree thing. At school, I didn't know what to put. So I just drew you guys and said you were both my parents. The teacher said it was fine, but some kids asked why we don't have the same last name. Riley sat down across from him, suddenly softer. Baby, you can call Mike whatever feels. Right to you? Ben looked at me. Is that okay? I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. Yeah, bud. You're bud. That's more than okay. He smiled, nodded, and went back to his soggy toast. Like the conversation never happened, but it stuck with me all day, all week. It wasn't the first time he'd said something like that. He'd slipped and called me dad before. Once at the garage. Once in a grocery store. But we never addressed it, never named it. Like saying it out loud might shatter it, but now the words were floating in the room, and they weren't going anywhere. That night after Ben went to bed, Riley and I sat on the couch, her legs tucked under her, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The rain tapped the windows like a gentle drumbeat. He's been asking more about it lately, she said. About last names, about being adopted, about what it all means. I nodded, staring into my mug. He asked if he could call me dad. Today? She exhaled slowly, I heard. I didn't know what to say. He said the right thing. I don't want to confuse him. It's not confused. Kids don't need blood to feel belonging. They just need presence. I looked at her. Really looked. Have you thought about it? I asked. She nodded. I have. The room was quiet. You'd really be okay with that? I asked. She turned to face me. Mike, he already sees you that way. I do too. But I won't ask you to make that leap unless you want it fully. And there it was. The thing she always gave me, freedom. Not pressure, not expectations. Just space to choose. I didn't answer that night. Not because I didn't, no, but because the weight of the decision felt too big to speak into casually. I needed to sit with it. Let it settle. I started doing research. Quietly. After hours. Sitting in the garage office, Googling how step-parent adoption works, it wasn't easy. There were forms, legal steps, background checks, and the biggest obstacle is biological father. Even though he'd been gone legally, he still held parental rights. The court would need to either terminate those rights voluntarily or forcefully before I could step in. I thought about that for a long time. Thought about what it meant to erase someone from a child's paperwork. Not just because they were absent, but because they were unsafe. I talked to a lawyer, old friend of mine who owed me a favor, told him the situation. He didn't sugarcoat it. It'll be an uphill battle unless the father consents. He's disappeared. That helps your case. I asked Riley if she had contact info. She pulled out a folder. Your inside were court documents, police reports, restraining orders that had been filed and dismissed. All the scars of a long, ugly history. She hadn't just been protecting Ben, she'd been surviving a war. She had the paperwork to prove it. I haven't heard from him in almost a year, she said. Last time he sent a birthday card. With no return address, Ben didn't even want to open it. That said more than any courtroom testimony ever could. I met with the lawyer again, papers in hand. We can make this work, he said, but it'll take time. You sure about this? Didn't hesitate. Yeah, I'm sure. When I got home, Riley was waiting on the porch. She didn't ask how the meeting went. Just reached out and took my hand like she already knew. I told her that night, I want to adopt him. Her eyes filled. She didn't speak. Just leaned forward and kissed me slow, deep, and full of every unspoken word. She didn't have the breath to say. The next few weeks were a blur of legal steps, signatures, background checks, home visits, interviews. But through it all, I kept coming back to one moment. Ben, sitting at the kitchen table, drawing a picture of a family, 3 stick. Figures, 1 taller, 1 medium, 1 small. All holding hands, and all with the same last name. It was a Thursday night when it happened, one of those quiet, in-between evenings that sneak up on you with unexpected weight. Ben was asleep early after his first field trip of the year. He'd talked our ears off at dinner about petting zoos and butter churns, then crashed face first into his pillow mid-sentence. Riley and I had cleaned up together, put on a movie we didn't plan to watch, and settled on the couch with mugs of tea. The room was dark, except for the flickering TV light and the soft hum of the dishwasher in the background. She was sitting, cross-legged, her hair pulled into a messy bun, oversized sweater draped around her like armor. She looked comfortable, but beneath that, I could feel something tight in the air. Tension, not sharp, just present. It's like something waiting to be. Said I turned to her. You're quiet tonight. She kept her eyes on the screen for a moment longer before answering. Just thinking. About. She hesitated, then set her mug down on the coffee table, leaned back against the cushions, and finally turned toward me. About how fast all of this is happening. I felt my stomach tense a little. Too fast? No, she said quickly, shaking her head. Not in a bad way, just fast. Like one day we were strangers, and now we're filling out adoption paperwork and arguing. Over who forgot to buy more almond milk? I chuckled softly. That was definitely me. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You ever feel like you're just waiting for it to fall apart? I nodded. Every day. That surprised her. She looked at me, head tilted slightly. Really? I've never had anything like this, I said. So yeah. Some days, I feel like I'm one mistake away from losing it. She pulled the blanket tighter around her. It's not just you. She paused, collecting herself. I've been carrying this guilt, she said, voice low, ever since Ben was born. Maybe even before that, like I failed him. By picking the wrong partner, by staying too long, by leaving too late, by not being enough. I reached for her hand and she let me take it. Riley, you kept him safe. Barely, she whispered. There were nights when I'd hear the door slam and my heart would stop. I didn't know if it was him coming back angry or leaving. For good, and I never knew which one was worse. Her voice cracked. I used to hide Ben in the bathroom when things got loud. We'd sit in the tub, and I'd play music on my phone and tell him we were having a quiet party. He thought it was a game, but I was just trying to keep him from hearing the shouting. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. Thought once I left, the fear would go with him, but it didn't. It stayed. It just changed shape. She looked at me then, And for the first time since we met, I saw the full depth of her exhaustion, not physical, but emotional. The kind that comes from enduring. When you came into our lives, it was like breathing again. But now that everything's good, I'm scared all over again. 'Cause if I lose this, if Ben loses, we don't know how we'd survive it. I didn't try to fix it. Didn't tell her she was overreacting. I knew that feeling too well. That fear of good things slipping through your fingers just when you finally started to believe you were worthy of them. So instead, I just said, "I'm not going anywhere." She nodded, eyes wet. "I want to believe that. And let me keep proving it." She leaned into me, head on my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. We sat like that for a long time. No more words, just the weight of everything she'd carried, settling between us like a silent guest we were finally ready to acknowledge. Eventually, she spoke again, quieter this time. "I haven't told you everything." I stayed still. "Okay." She took a shaky breath. "Ben's father. He tried to come back. Not just once. Twice. The second time was after we moved in with my sister. He showed up in the middle of the night, pounding on the door, demanding to see his son. I clenched my fists without meaning to. My sister called the police. He ran before they got there. But he left this note, said he'd fight for. What's his? That Ben was his blood and I had no right to keep him away. My jaw tightened. You have every right. I know that now. But back then, I didn't. I was still shaking. Still waking up at 3 a.m. to check the locks. Still feeling like I had to apologize for protecting my own child. She looked up at me, fierce and fragile all at once. I want this adoption to happen. I need it too. But I need you to understand what that means. You're not just stepping into a role, you're stepping into a storm. One I've been holding off alone for a long time. I reached up, brushed a tear from her cheek. Then it's time you stopped holding it off alone. She broke then fully. Let go in a way I don't think she'd ever allowed herself to. I held her through it. Both of us wrapped in the same blanket, both of us shaking a little under the weight of what it meant to be vulnerable. To admit fear, to accept love. That night, we didn't talk about paperwork or court dates or background checks. We didn't talk about the logistics of parenting or the nightmares she still sometimes had. We just existed together. And in that silence, something solid formed. Not blind optimism, not denial. Just the kind of quiet, steady belief you only earn. By walking through fire and choosing again, and again not to run from the smoke, it didn't happen during a crisis. Not after a fight. Not during some dramatic confrontation. It came, as these things often do, in the middle of a quiet night when the house was still. When the weight of the world finally sat down beside you and demanded to be noticed, it was just past midnight. Riley had fallen asleep on the couch, her head resting on my thigh, one hand still loosely holding a paperback she'd been reading before she drifted off. The TV played low in the background, some old movie neither of us were really watching. I sat there, gently running my fingers through her hair, trying to focus on the screen, but my mind was elsewhere. Lately, I'd been thinking a lot about my mom. I didn't talk about her much, not with Riley, not with anyone really. The memories were sharp, too sharp. Most of my past was blurred out, soft-edged like something underwater. But my mom? That was different. She was the last part of my childhood that felt real, real enough to hurt. She died when I was 10, liver failure. It's too many years of hard living and broken promises. I remembered her laugh, loud, unfiltered, the kind of laugh that made strangers smile. But I also remembered the way her hands shook when she tried to cook, the way she'd disappear into her bedroom for hours, the way she'd cry behind the bathroom door when she thought I couldn't hear. After she passed, I bounced around the system. Group homes, foster placements, all of it. Some decent people, some not. But none of them felt like home. None of them stayed. That was the lesson I learned early. Nothing stays. And if it does, it's only until you start depending on it. I thought I'd buried all of that. Thought I'd walled it up behind years of routine and distance. Now, with adoption paperwork sitting in a drawer upstairs, Ben calling me dad more days than not. with Riley looking at me like I was her safe place. It was all coming back, because now I had something to lose. And that's when the panic hit, sudden, brutal. My chest tightened like a vice. My hands started shaking. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't the kind of panic that made you flail, it was the kind that froze you. It made you feel like if you moved even an inch, everything around you would collapse. I didn't want to wake her, but I couldn't sit still, so I carefully slipped out from under her, tucked a blanket around her shoulders, stepped outside onto the porch. The air was cold, crisp, a reminder that fall was nearly over. That winter was already brushing its course. Fingers against the edges of the trees, I sat on the porch steps, elbows on my knees, trying to pull air into my lungs. But it wouldn't come easy. And then I cracked. It wasn't loud, wasn't violent. It was just a slow unraveling. It's tears I didn't know I was still capable of. Memories I'd never given words to. The sound of my own breath catching in my throat. Like I was choking on ghosts. I didn't even hear the door open behind me. But then Riley was there. She didn't speak. She just sat beside me on the step, close enough that our shoulders touched. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't press. She just let the silence sit with us. Let me break without needing to perform for it. After a long minute, finally whispered, "I'm scared. I don't know how to love right." She turned her head slightly. "Why?" "Because no one ever taught me. My mom. She tried, but she was always drowning in her own stuff. And after she died, every place I went, every person, was all conditional, temporary. Love was something you earn by being easy, by staying small. And when you messed up, it disappeared." Riley's voice was soft. "So you learned not to trust it." I nodded. "I learned to survive without it, and now it's everywhere, and I don't know what to do with it." She reached over and took my hand. "You let it in, even if it scares you." "I don't want to fail him, Riley. I don't." "Want to mess Ben up? You won't?" "How do you know?" "Because you care enough to worry about it. It's already more than most kids get." I looked at her, eyes wet. "You and him. You're the first thing I've ever really wanted to stay for." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Then stay." We sat there, wrapped in the quiet. The stars above us blinking slow and patient. "I never told anyone about my mom," I said after a while. "Not the real stuff." Riley nodded. "You don't have to. Not all at once. But I'm here when you're ready." I finally let myself lean into her. Let myself be small. Let someone else carry the weight, Tevin, just for a few minutes. And something about that broke something else loose in me. Not the pain, not the fear, but the belief that I didn't deserve to heal because, for the first time, I did, not because I'd earned it, but because they gave it to me anyway. There's something no one tells you about healing. It doesn't come in a moment. It comes in inches, in soft glances, in quiet mornings when the voices in your head aren't quite as loud. It comes in moments like the one I found myself in on a crisp Saturday morning watching Ben pour syrup over his pancakes while Riley hummed in the kitchen, the sunlight catching the curve of her jaw like it was drawn by God himself. I was still carrying everything I always had, the fear, the old trauma, the doubt. But now, I wasn't carrying it alone. That made all the difference. That morning, I caught myself staring at them, not watching, staring, because the scene in front of me wasn't chaos. It wasn't a story I was passing through. It was mine. My kitchen, my kid, my girl. And in that moment, I knew it was time. Not time for the future, for maybe someday down the road. Time right now? I was going to ask her to marry me. The thought should have scared me. 2 years ago, it would have made me run for the hills. But now, it felt obvious. It felt overdue. Not because I needed to prove something, but because real love deserves a home, a name, a vow. And I was ready to give her all three. Still, I wasn't going to rush it. This woman, this fierce, beautiful, battle-worn woman, she deserved more than a rushed question and a standard ring. She deserved intentionality. She deserved something that felt like us. So I started planning first. Step. Talk to Ben. That afternoon, I picked him up from school solo. We went out for ice cream, just us guys. He picked the weirdest flavor on the board, blue bubblegum with marshmallows. I stuck with chocolate, sat in a corner of booth while he jabbered on about some kid named Mason who got his shoelaces stuck in a revolving door. When he finally took a breath, I said, "Can I ask you something?" He nodded, cheeks full of ice cream. "What would you think if I asked your mom to marry me?" He blinked. "Like, for real?" "Yeah, for real." He grinned, so wide his whole face lit up. "That'd be awesome," I laughed. "Yeah." Nodded rapidly. "Then you'd be my real dad." I felt my throat catch. "I mean, you already are," he added quickly. "But that would make it, like, official." I reached across the table and bumped fists with him.
"Oh, you think she'd
"Say yes?" He shrugged. "Only one way to find out." I'd never felt so encouraged by an 8-year-old in my life. Now, I just had to figure out how to do it. I wasn't the fancy restaurant type. Neither was she. We weren't about grand gestures. We were about grit, about showing up, about building something solid with what we had. So I decided to do it in the place where it all started, the garage. It was the first place. She saw me. The first place she trusted me. The place where she brought her broken-down car, and I ended up rebuilding. I spent the next 2 days getting everything ready. I cleaned every surface, polished the tools, hung strings of warm lights from the rafters, covered the concrete floor with old rugs and pillows, set up a little table in the center with candles, flowers, real ones this time, and 3 plates, because Ben was part of this too. Then I asked Charlie to keep them distracted Saturday evening. "Bring them by around 7, I said. "Just tell them I need help with something weird and urgent." Charlie raised an eyebrow. "This for what I think it is?" I nodded. He grinned. "Hell yes, brother." That night, I wore a clean button-up. No grease, no stains, even shaved. Ben wore the tiny blazer Riley had bought him for picture day. Said he looked like a CEO in training. Riley wore a long, simple dress and a confused expression. "What is this?" she asked. As she stepped into the garage, eyes scanning the lights, the candles, the food, the cleaned-up space, I stepped forward, heart pounding harder than it ever had in my life. "This," I said, "is where everything changed for me. This is where I found something I didn't think existed. A second chance at love, at family, at peace." She blinked, already tearing up. "I know we've never done things the conventional way. We didn't meet on an app. We didn't date for years before moving in. We skipped a lot of steps. But Riley, I've never been more sure about anything. In my life," I dropped to one knee. Ben gasped, like he was watching a Marvel movie. "Will you marry me?" She stared at me, mouth open, hands trembling. Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a joyful one, a release. "Of course I will," she said. I stood up. She threw her arms around me, burying her face in my shoulder. Ben ran up and hugged. Both our legs. "Group hug," shouted. We laughed and cried and stood there, tangled in each other. A strange little family built from broken pieces and, somehow, miraculously, whole. Later that night, after the dishes were cleaned and the candles burned low, we sat in the garage on an old couch we'd dragged in just for the night. Riley leaned her head on my shoulder. "I didn't think I'd ever get married again," she said. "I didn't think I trusted myself to choose someone safe." I kissed the top of her head. "You didn't choose safe. You chose real." Hey. Looked up at me. "That's even scarier." "Yeah," I said, "but way better." We didn't need a chapel, or a band, or a white dress with a price tag the size of a down payment. We just needed each other, a garage, a little courage, and the belief that 2 people who had every reason to give up on love could still choose it anyway. And that was everything. We could have done it anywhere. A park, a courthouse, a beach with sunset lighting and champagne flutes clinking in the background. But none of that felt right. It didn't feel us. We started in a garage, and if we were going to begin our next chapter, it made sense to do it there, surrounded by rust and rubber and old tools that had built more than just machines. They'd built trust. Built a life. Riley was the first to say it. We were lying in bed one night, legs tangled, soft breathing between us. The proposal was behind us, the future ahead. "I don't want anything fancy," she said. "I don't want to wear a dress I can't breathe in or say vows in front of people who barely know us." I nodded. "Good. Because I was planning to put a ring on your finger in the same place I fell in love with you." She laughed. "You fell in love with me in the middle of an oil change. Damn right I did. So we planned it quietly. No invitations, no registry. Just a handful of people who mattered. Charlie, my lawyer friend, who also happened to be ordained Riley's sister. And, of course, Ben, our best man, our flower boy, and our ring bearer, all rolled into one. We picked a Saturday afternoon, clear sky, 72 degrees. The kind of day that makes the whole world feel a little softer. I spent the week prepping the garage like it was going to host royalty. I swept the floors 3 times, painted the walls white again, bought strings of soft bulbs and hung them overhead, just like I had the night I proposed. Riley brought wildflowers from a local farm and arranged them in old mason jars. I found an old workbench, sanded it down, and turned it into the altar. She sewed together fabric to hang from the rafter screen, gold, deep blue colors that somehow felt like us. Ben made signs. With cardboard and markers, he wrote, "This is love. Watch your step. No greasy shoes past this point." He wore a little navy blazer over jeans and insisted on wearing sunglasses because that's what cool guys do. I didn't argue. At 2 o'clock sharp, the music started, just a single speaker playing Riley's favorite Van Morrison song. I stood at the altar, heart thudding like a jackhammer, wearing a white shirt and a clean pair of jeans. My boots were scuffed. I didn't care. Charlie gave me a thumbs up from the corner. Then the garage door slid open, and there she was. Riley, she didn't wear white. She wore deep emerald green, a soft dress that hugged her in all the right places and floated just around her knees. Her hair was loose, swept over one shoulder. No veil, no heels, just bare feet on the concrete floor, walking toward me like she'd been walking toward me her whole life. Ben held her hand. He walked her down the aisle. I don't think I've ever fought tears harder. When they reached me, she looked up, eyes glassy. "You sure about this?" she whispered. I grinned. Too late to back out now. The ceremony was short, simple, exactly how it needed to be. We didn't read long vows, just promises, quiet ones. I promised to keep showing up, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. I promised to be safe for you, to be soft when you need softness, and strong when the world feels too loud. I promised to protect your heart like it's mine, because it is. Then Ben stepped forward with the rings. To silver bands. Simple, strong, no diamonds, no frills. We slid them on each other's fingers. "I now pronounce you," the officiant started. "Wait," Ben shouted. We all turned to him. He grinned. "Can I say it?" Everyone laughed. "Go ahead, bud," I said. He cleared his throat, dramatically. "I now pronounce you officially awesome married people. You may now high-five." We didn't high-five. We kissed, soft, deep, right. And the garage erupted in applause from the handful of people who understood what it meant to see 2 broken souls finally put back together. Afterward, we ate barbecue from paper plates, drank root beer floats, handed out little thank you cards he made with stickers and glitter that ended up everywhere. Oh, Charlie gave a toast about how he once thought I'd never let a woman past my firewall. And now I was running full-time family man firmware. People stayed late. Long after the sun dipped behind the hills. Long after the last song played, and when the lights dimmed and the guests left. I stood in the middle of that garage, wife by my side, son at my feet, and thought, damn, we really did it. That night, we didn't go to a hotel. We didn't leave town. We didn't need a honeymoon. We put Ben to bed, ordered pizza, sat on the couch flipping through Polaroids someone had taken during the ceremony. In one of them, Riley's mid-laugh, head tilted back, wildflowers in her hand. In another, Ben's. Standing between us, holding both our hands with a proud grin on his face. In the last one, I'm looking at her, not the camera. And even though I don't remember the shutter going off, I remember that look, because it was the look of a man who finally stopped running. A man who finally came home. "You okay?" she asked. "Better than okay," I said. She leaned in. "We're married." I smiled. "It feels different, doesn't it? Feels right." I reached for her hand. "You still want to call this place a garage?" I asked. She looked around. The lights, the tools, the rugs and empty glasses and leftover cake. "I think it's a chapel now," she said. And I couldn't argue, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't fixing engines. I was building forever. Marriage, contrary to every storybook ending, doesn't start with a kiss or a ring or a fancy signature on a line. It starts the next day, when the laundry piles up, the kid has a meltdown, when you're tired and short and suddenly realize love is no longer a feeling, it's a decision you make over and over again. Our first big test came less than 3 weeks after the wedding. It started small. Everything does. Riley got a call about a job opportunity full-time, back in nursing, at a local clinic that focused on underserved communities. It was the kind of position that aligned perfectly with her heart. Something with purpose. Something she used to dream about before life became about escaping instead of building. When she told me, I smiled, said all the right things. "That's amazing. You'd be perfect for it. Tell me how I can support you." At the time, but then came the logistics. The job required a 7 a.m. start time, which meant I'd be on the hook for getting Ben ready, fed, and dropped off every morning, while still running the garage. It also meant she'd get home later, and dinners, homework, bedtime. That weight would shift too. Now let me be clear, none of that scared me, not in theory. What did scare me was that old voice, the one that said, if you take on more, you'll break. If she needs too much from you, you'll fail. I didn't tell her that, of course. Instead, I nodded, played the supportive husband, encouraged her to take the interview. She did, and she got the job. We celebrated with Chinese takeout and a bottle of cheap champagne. Ben made a congrats mommy card with a drawing of her wearing a stethoscope and saving a T-Rex. But inside was spiraling. I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't even try. I just got quieter, more withdrawn. The days leading up to her start date, I buried myself in work, said yes to every walk-in, took on projects that should have waited. I came home tired, irritable, short-tempered, and she noticed. She always noticed. "What's going on with you?" She asked one night after Ben went to bed. "Nothing," I lied. She folded her arms. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Shut down." "Not shutting down," I snapped. Too fast, too loud. Her eyebrows lifted. "Really?" I sighed, rubbed my face. "I'm just tired, Riley." She stepped forward. "This isn't just tired. This is distance. This is you starting to retreat the second something changes." I didn't answer. "Are you upset I took the job?" "No," I said. "I'm not upset. I didn't expect things to shift so fast." "Shift." She repeated. "I mean, this is all new. We just got married, and now everything's changing again." "That's life, Mike. Things change." "That's not a threat's reality, I know," I said. "But I spent my entire life avoiding chaos, and sometimes even good change feels like chaos." Her face softened. "Then tell me that. Don't pretend like everything's fine while you're dying inside." And that right there, it's the moment, the test. Not the job, not the schedule. The test was, will you be honest when it's messy? Will you speak when silence is easier? Will you let your partner see the parts of you that are still afraid? I took a breath. "You want to know the truth?" I asked. "Always. I'm scared I won't be enough." She blinked. "Enough for what?" "For all of it. For Ben, for the garage, for you working full-time again, for dinner and homework and bad dreams and flat tires and bills and birthdays. I'm scared I'll screw it up. That I'll forget something, that I'll let you down." Shh. Didn't interrupt, just listened. "I've never seen this done right," I said. "I didn't grow up watching two people make it work. I watched people leave. I watched people yell. I watched people disappear. And now I'm being asked to be the man who doesn't. And some days, I don't know if I can carry all that." Silence. Then she stepped in, slow and deliberate, until her hands were on my chest. "You don't have to carry all of it." Her voice was soft but firm. "We share the weight. That's what marriage is." I looked at her, eyes burning. "What if I drop something? Then I'll catch it." I pulled her in then, held her like I'd just remembered who I was. And in that embrace, something shifted. Because here's the thing about tests. When you pass them together, you're stronger on the other side. We talked for hours that night about schedules. Roles, about making space for stress without letting it turn into silence. We made a game plan, shared the load, and the next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, got Ben ready. Burned the toast, but salvaged breakfast. I drove him to school, with music blasting, windows down, and for the first time, it didn't feel like I was faking it. It felt like I was becoming that evening. I got home before Riley. Ben was on the couch reading, already in his pajamas. I started dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta. When she walked through the door, tired, but glowing, I met her at the threshold with a glass of wine. "Welcome home," I said. She smiled. "You look good like this." "Like what?" "Like ours." I pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "This is where I belong." And in that ordinary moment, no drama, no declarations, I realized something I'd never understood before. Love isn't just about the highs. It's not just about the vows or the first kiss or the wedding lights. Strung across a greasy garage, it's about coming home and being welcomed in. Over and over again, it was one of those ordinary mornings where everything felt unremarkable on the surface. Sunlight peeking through the blinds, low groan of the coffee machine sputtering to life, the clinking of breakfast plates as Ben failed to pour his own cereal without turning it into a kitchen-wide event. Riley stood at the counter in her scrubs, sipping her coffee, hair still damp from the shower, flipping through a stack of unopened mail, and then she paused. "Mike," she said, voice tighter than usual. "This one's from Family Services." I froze mid-bite, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Yeah," I asked, casual on the outside, but my heart kicked hard in my chest. She turned the envelope in her hand. It wasn't big, just a plain white one, with a printed label and no decoration. No fanfare. You'd miss it if you weren't looking closely. But we had been looking, for weeks. Every trip to the mailbox had become a subtle ritual of hope and expectation, a waiting game. I stood up and walked over, wiped my hands on a kitchen towel, and took the envelope from her. It felt heavier than it looked. Ben looked up from the table, spoon in mouth. "What's that?" I glanced down at him. It might be something important. I didn't open it right there. Couldn't. Not yet. Not in the middle of toast crumbs and spilled milk and school backpacks leaning against the front door. It felt too sacred to rip open in passing, so I waited. I dropped Ben off at school. Riley left for her shift at the clinic, and I walked back into the house, holding that envelope like it was a live wire. I sat at the kitchen table, took a deep breath, and finally slid my thumb under the seal. The paper inside wasn't fancy. No golden emblem. No ceremony. But there it was, Superior Court of County Records. Final Adoption Decree Petitioner Michael James Everett Minor, Benjamin Riley Cross, effective date, immediate. I stared at those lines like they were written in another language. The words didn't register at first. They were just ink. Just structure. But then, something dropped in me. Like a floor I didn't know I'd been standing on finally gave way, and let me feel the full weight of what this meant. Ben was my son. Not like a son. Not basically my kid. No quotation marks. No disclaimers. No hesitation. He was mine, and I was his. Legally. Permanently. Fully. I ran my hand across the page as if it would turn into something physical, as if the letters themselves would rise up and confirm what my heart already knew. A part of me thought I'd feel different when it finally happened.
Bigger.
Maybe bolder. Like I'd suddenly grow into some new version of myself with broader shoulders and deeper wisdom. But all I felt was peace, not fireworks, not tears, just stillness. The kind of stillness that only comes after a long, brutal climb. When you finally reach the top and the wind settles and you realize, I made it. I didn't fall. I took a photo of the decree with my phone and sent it to Riley. 2 seconds later, my phone rang. Her voice on the other end was already shaking. It came. I heard her exhale. A long, uneven breath. I don't even know what to say. Me. Neither does he know yet? Not yet. Promise you won't tell him until we're both home? Of course. I could hear the emotion in her silence. She didn't need to speak it. I felt it through the line. I love you, she said. I love you too. When she got home that evening, we waited until after dinner. Ben was in his pajamas, curled up on the couch with his stuffed dinosaur and a blanket that had probably been washed more times than I could count. We told him we had something to share. Something big. He looked up, wide-eyed. Am I in trouble? Riley laughed. Not unless you count that cereal spill this morning. He grinned. I sat down across from him and pulled the paper out of the folder. I'd kept hidden all day. You remember how we talked about the adoption stuff? He nodded slowly. Well, handed him the page. It's done. He stared at it for a second. This is it. His face lit up. First confusion, then understanding. Then joy, so you're my dad now? Like, really? I nodded, throat tight. Really? He jumped up and threw himself into my chest with all the force his little frame could manage. I knew it, he said. I told Mason at school you were already my dad. Now the world knows. I laughed through the tears I was trying and failing to hold back. Riley sat beside us, tears streaking down her cheeks too. We all just held each other, and in that moment, I knew something I hadn't dared believe for most of my life. This was my family, not just something I'd stumbled into, not something fragile or fleeting, but real, chosen, cemented in place, not by blood, but by decision. The next few days were a blur of little milestones. We took a photo together and framed it. Riley surprised us with a cake chocolate, Ben's favorite with Welcome Home Mike plus Ben, scrawled in blue icing. We didn't throw a party. We didn't post online. This wasn't about show. It was about closure. For Riley, it was the end of fear of legal gaps, of what-ifs, of ghosts who might return to claim what they abandoned. For me, it was the end of floating. I had a name now, not just on paper, but in Ben's eyes. Dad, a title. I never thought I'd earn dot and damn if I didn't want to live up to it one night. A few days later, I found Ben in his room at bedtime. He was supposed to be sleeping, but his bedside lamp was still on. I walked in and found him sitting cross-legged on his bed, holding the adoption decree like it was a treasure map. Why are you reading that again? I asked, sitting beside him. I don't know, he said. It just makes me feel good. Yeah, like I'm not going anywhere. Like you're not either. I ruffled his hair. That's because we're stuck together now, he smirked. Even if I spill cereal again? Even then. He grinned and leaned against me, head on my arm. Thanks for picking me, he whispered. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because how do you explain to an 8-year-old that you weren't the one who did the picking? He picked me. He made me into a father. He taught me what family meant. And now it was up to me to live it. Every damn day. 1 year. 12 months. 52 weeks. 365 days since that envelope showed up in our mailbox and quietly changed everything. No fanfare, no parade. It's just a simple letter confirming what our hearts had already decided long before the paperwork caught up. Today, I sat in the same chair at the kitchen table, the light still hitting the countertop the same way, the familiar hum of the fridge in the background, but nothing else felt the same. I was different. We were different. Because when you love someone day after day, not perfectly, but deliberately, it adds up. Quietly, it rewires everything. This morning, Ben came downstairs wearing his future astronaut pajamas and a hoodie that didn't match. He made pancakes. On his own, Granted, they were undercooked and weirdly shaped, and the syrup ended up all over the dog's fur, but he did it. And he shouted, "I got this, Dad." Like it was the most natural sentence in the world. A year ago, I held my breath every time he used the word dad, unsure if I had truly earned it. Now it's second nature. He says it with confidence. Without testing the air around it, yes, it's no longer a question. Riley came in a few minutes later, hair wet from the shower, sleep still clinging to the edges of her voice. She kissed me on the neck like she always does and said, "He used the good syrup again." I nodded. I let it slide. He's celebrating. She smiled. "I guess it's worth it." We didn't say it out loud what day it was. We didn't need to. We both felt it. That quiet knowing, like an anniversary between people who don't need reminders because their entire life now is the reminder. After breakfast, Ben went out to the garage to tune up his bike, which mostly involved putting on goggles and pretending to tighten imaginary bolts. I followed him out, grabbed a wrench, and tinkered with an old lawnmower that hadn't run in months. He looked up and said, "Hey, Dad, yeah, do you think I'll be a good dad someday?" I froze. Because damn, how do you answer that when just a few years ago you weren't sure you even could be one? I turned, crouched down beside him, and said, "Ben, I think if you keep leading with your heart like you already do, and you care the way you care now, then yeah, you'll be the best kind." Nodded. Serious, thoughtful, cool. Then he went right back to pretending the bike's handlebars were missile launchers. Because he's 8. That's what 8-year-olds do. But in that flash of a moment, I saw his future. Not the actual details, just the shape of it. I realized he already has something I never did at his age. Stability, that's the win. It's not about being the best father or the perfect husband. It's about being here. Every day. Showing up. Keeping the promise not just once at the altar or in a courtroom, but again and again in the small things, in the routines, in the silence. I still keep the adoption papers in my top drawer. Not because I need the proof, but because I never want to forget how hard it was to believe this could be real. Sometimes I pull them out and read the words slowly, like scripture, not out of insecurity, but reverence. Because I know what they cost, not just in time and court filings, but in courage. In letting go of the belief that I was too broken to ever be a father, a partner, a man worthy of being chosen. There are a lot of things that changed over the past year. We got a dog, Ben named her Throttle. She's clumsy and overly affectionate, and once peed on my boots. She's family now. Riley planted a garden, tomatoes, herbs, 2 sunflowers. That grew 10 feet tall and made Ben believe we were being watched by giants. I expanded the garage. Took on a part-time apprentice. Business is steady. Not booming, but steady. Enough that we sleep at night without checking the bank account every morning. We took our first real trip to a long weekend to the mountains. No cell signal. No itinerary. Just a cabin, a fireplace, and the sound of Ben snoring on the pull-out couch while Throttle barked at squirrels outside. But most of the changes were invisible. Subtle Riley stopped double-checking the locks every night. Ben stopped asking if I was coming home, and I stopped looking for the exit. That's the biggest one. I used to live like every relationship had a fire escape, just in case. 1 foot in. One hand always near the door, but now I know I'd rather burn in the house I built than hide from the heat. And yeah, we had our moments. Arguments. Miscommunications. Days when the house felt too small, or too loud, or too much. Like the night Ben got a stomach bug, and we both took. Turned sleeping on the bathroom floor, or the week Riley and I got into a blowout. Over a missed appointment and a forgotten grocery run, or the time I came home too late, too tired, and forgot to say goodnight. Ben's face the next morning made me want to rip my own heart out. But we never walked out. Not once. We stayed. We sat at the table and talked. We took breaks instead of slamming doors. We apologized. Hugged it out. Took long walks around the neighborhood when the walls felt too tight. We learned each other's silences, triggers, repair codes. That's what real love looks like. Not perfection, but persistence. We just keep showing up. And because we do, life keeps showing up for us. The other day, Riley handed me a folder filled with sketches. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled. The beginning of the clinic. I looked through it. Floor plans, budget notes, staffing needs, a dream built out in black ink on recycled paper. "You serious about this?" I asked. She nodded. "I think it's time." I kissed her forehead and said, "Then let's build it. Not let me fund it or let me run it or let me take it over. Just let's," because her dream is part of mine now, and that's how I know we made it. Not because we're free from conflict, but because we share everything. Now, dreams, fears, chores, goals, grief. I think the most powerful sentence in a marriage isn't "I love you," it's "me too." That night, we lit a candle. Just one. Not for ceremony, not for some big celebration, just to mark the moment. 1 year since our lives officially merged into one name, one home, one heartbeat. Ben handed me a card he made at school. The front said "Happy Adoption Day." Oh, in giant. Uneven block letters. Inside he'd written, "Thanks for being my dad. For real. Forever. P.S. Can we go get donuts now?" I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the card. "Only if I get to." He grinned. "Deal." So we did. We piled into the car and drove to our favorite corner bakery. Got a dozen donuts. 3 of them ridiculous and covered in cereal and frosting and chocolate chips. We sat in the car. Powdered sugar on our fingers, radio playing something. Old school and smooth. And I looked in the rearview mirror at that kid. My kid Dan, I realized. I don't need a different life. I just need to keep living this one better. Every day, 1 hour at a time. 1 donut at a time. 1 laugh. 1 apology. 1 quiet moment. 1 brave choice after another. And maybe, just maybe, that's how ordinary lives become extraordinary, not because of what they do, but because of how hard they fought to stay simple and sacred. So yeah, it's been 1 year. And in a world where people ghost each other over text, where families fracture because no one wants to be the first to say "I was wrong," where vulnerability is treated like weakness, we stayed, we built, we loved loud, we cried in garages, we danced in kitchens. We became more than just a couple who met under a broken car hood. We became a unit, a team, a forever. And if I could go back to that version of Mitha, one who stood under flickering fluorescent lights, wondering if he was built for anything other than solitude, I'd tell him this: you were always enough. You just hadn't been given a chance to prove it, but you will. You will, and one day, you'll look around your life and realize the best thing you ever built wasn't under the hood of a car, it was under the roof of your own home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Let's click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.